Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's about 6 after 1. So, before we go any further, though, I would like to thank Minta Trimble again for all of her efforts last night. It was a lot of fun. We appreciate everything. Also, like to thank quickly again the staff at the Eastern Kentucky Exposition Center. You have no idea how much they've helped us behind the scenes. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon, focused on placemaking, Griffin Van Meter. Griffin lives in a bungalow on Kentucky's Old Frontier Highway in Lexington, Kentucky, with his beautiful, patient wife, Sarah Wiley, and his beautiful son, Otis. Griffin is a Kentuckian that believes in the importance of place, but that's just the tip of his city-shaping scope. Griffin has made his niche as a cultural catalyst in the community through his various organizations and projects across many campaigns. He also has an award-winning Kentucky Proud beard. Griffin is a partner in a Lexington-based branding agency, Bullhorn Creative, and Kentucky for Kentucky, a rogue marketing company. The No Lie Community Development Corporation, of which Griffin serves as president, recently received a $425,000 creative placemaking grant from Art Place America to renovate 40 shotgun-styled houses in an 1850s hemp warehouse into creative maker spaces on the north side of Lexington. In addition, the No Lie CDC has received a prestigious National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town grant, to create a cultural plan and 2 large-scale public art projects. I've worked with Griffin on a couple of projects, starting maybe back in 2005. He is a passionate preservationist and an awfully creative guy, and I'm very excited that he's here with us today. So, Griffin Van Meter. Thanks.
How's everybody doing? Yeah, woo, 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 woo. Power pose, everybody, get your confidence up. Come on, get your hands up. Woo! I'm going to save you. Put the Jesus in you. Craig forgot to say that we first worked together. We planned the George Rogers Clark prom themed Under the Sea preservation back in 1997. We crushed it. Best prom ever. I got all, there I am. Let me get back. Okay, that's me. That says y'all, that doesn't say Yale. I don't want you guys to get confused that I'm smart or something. The biggest words I'll use are words like awesome, good, stuff. That's kind of the extent of where I like to keep it. And thanks so much for having me, to the Kentucky Heritage Council, the State Historic Preservation Office, the SOAR Group, and also Community Trust Bank Corp. I'm pumped you guys invited me to the No to Low Expectation Comedy Night here down in Pikeville. I'll try to do my best. That's actually a real thing we do. We do it at Al's Bar. It's a No to Low Expectation Comedy Night open mic. And it's a lot of fun, a lot of bad jokes. So come up for that. The next one's Monday, August 18th. House is on the corner of Lyman 6. To kind of get started, I just want to say, you guys probably won't believe me about this, but actually I shaved this morning. So there's a comparison pic. You guys know who that creepy dude is? No. The creepy dude's me. The other dude, yeah, Devil Anse Hatchfield, he wasn't a Kentuckian. He actually killed a bunch of Kentuckians, but his beard was better than Randall McCoy's beard, so I included him. And just to make the point that history remembers those with good beards. This is a list of 22 kick-ass Kentucky beards. Abraham Lincoln, Randy Macho Man Savage, Ming the Merciful, Jesus, he was a Kentuckian, Harlan Sanders. We made this group, Kentucky for Kentucky. We worked with a designer out in Louisville to create that. So we have those out in the lobby if you guys want them. And I started thinking about, like, what's great about Pikeville. There's a lot of great things about Pikeville. One thing is you guys hate Coke, the drink. I don't know about the drug, but the drink, you guys hate the drink, and you love drinking Pepsi. You actually lead the nation in Pepsi consumption, which I actually think means Mountain Dew. And this is something you guys might not know about Kentucky, but the Mountain Dew, the source of Mountain Dew is actually Cumberland Falls, where the Mountain Dew Moonbow exists, and that's only there at Cumberland Falls. Billy Ray Cyrus, he's not from Pikeville, but from Flatwoods, Kentucky, and that's where the Kentucky waterfall, the hairstyle, first developed. Which all just kind of gets to this big point that Kentucky kicks ass, and that's kind of where I kind of came from. I had this moment in time with my buddy Whit where we said, hey, we could do better than what the state's given us. Let's get after it. So I want to play this quick video of what happened about, this happened in December 2012, and my whole life has changed dramatically, and so has Kentucky's, I think. So here we go. Here's a little video for you.
Recently, 3 proud Kentuckians took it upon themselves to rebrand the great Commonwealth of Kentucky. A pretty big task considering these boys had zero money and no one asked them to do it. First, the boys went all over the state and asked the people what they thought about the bluegrass.
Kentucky kicks ass.
Kentucky kicks ass.
Kentucky kicks butt. Down here in Kentucky, Turtle Man kicks butt.
Second, they made a logo, a YouTube video, and a few kick-ass ads. Third, they put it on the interweb. And just like that, Kentucky had been rebranded. Kentuckians loved it. The press didn't know what to believe. Then the USA Today and the state outed them boys for not having any authority. Kentuckians were furious with the state's response. They came out to defend the boys and the new slogan. Local media came to their defense. National media came to their defense. Daniel Boone grabbed his musket and came to their defense. All of a sudden, the state had a little bourbon revolution on their hands. Realizing the groundswell, the state called the boys in for a sit-down. The Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Chief Mama congratulated them for creating Kentucky's most successful branding campaign ever. They wanted Kentucky Kicks Ass, but they needed to check with their constituency first. NPR got wind of the kick-assery taking place in Kentucky. They interviewed the boys and ran a national piece on all things considered. Sure enough, they got the blessing from Kentucky's big man. Meanwhile, the press kept rolling in and people kept on signing up for the Kentucky Kicks Ass message. It's funny what can be accomplished with a good idea, a YouTube video, good design, social media, and a few proud Kentuckians. The boys are still fighting the fight, working hard to make sure the entire world knows that Kentucky sure does kick a lot of ass.
Kentucky kicks ass.
Well, yeah, that happened. Thanks. Thank you. J-Law, Jennifer Lawrence approved of it. That's second base with J-Law, if anybody's keeping count. Pretty impressive. Thank you. Here's some quick Kentucky facts that you guys should know. In Kentucky, there are more barrels of bourbon than there are people. I will, who knows how many people there are? What is it? 4.9. Whoever said that first, I'll give you a poster. All right. Or no, 4.3. How many? I just ruined it. That's how many barrels of bourbon there are. There are 4.9. Everybody will get a poster. So we also invented fried chicken. Cheeseburgers were invented at Kalen's, and there's a good chance we invented bacon. You guys knew that, right? Was that what this conference was about, to try to get weed legalized? Kentucky invented it. Thank you. So I like that when anybody asks me for my biography or introduction or my byline, the first thing I always want to say is that I live on Limestone, the old Kentucky's old frontier highway, in a renovated bungalow with my wife, Sarah Wiley, my son Otis. We actually have another kid in the way. I don't know how that happened, that bourbon, weed. But I always like to start there, and I think it's funny that a lot of people, that's the last thing they put in any of their bylines. It's the last sentence of any book, that they live with their family in this place. And I think the complete opposite. And that's where my story starts, and why it continues is because I love my family. And at the end of the day, all I want to be known as is a good dad, a good husband, a good steward. And if good things happen in the place I live in, then that's really cool. And as a result of this, Kentucky then has become my family too. But Kentucky's kind of like that weird uncle, you love him a lot, but sometimes you just got to close your eyes and be like, whoa, man. So I got invited to tell you what I know. I've just also happened to get in this world of creative placemaking, mainly because I want my wife and kid to grow up in a really fun, great place, and I want to provide quality of life for them. So I'm going to tell you about a couple creative placemaking events, some art projects that are happening in Lexington, mainly because I know about them. Hopefully you guys can steal them or learn from them. We can keep this casual. If the spirit moves you, you can heckle me. We can do call and response. You can interrupt at any time. And I have some other, any heckling? Yeah, do you have a question? Go for it. Okay, if you guys do have a question, just yell out and we'll do it. I got the mic, I'll do that thing. And then I have a lot of videos because I think videos tell really good stories. I only have 2 minutes worth of speaking material, so I needed to supplement it somehow. I also paid somebody to make these videos, so I want to show them. And this is a conference about being creative. So basically, before we get too deep into it, here my thesis is this. And this is, after this, you can leave, you can play Candy Crush, I don't care what you do. And there were earplugs downstairs. If anybody needs earplugs, they just want to tune out, go get the earplugs downstairs. My thesis is this. By bringing folks together and by giving them an opportunity to interact and providing them moments where life and progress can happen, that's what's most important. That's what we're doing. We're providing opportunities for people to interact. Some of us are doing it through the built physical environment. Some of us are doing it through small businesses opening up the cafes. Some of us are doing it through engaged art projects. But at the end of the day, if we're architects, artists, public administrators, politicians, that's what we're doing. We're providing spaces for people to interact. And if you're not doing that, then your city's not going to come back the way you want it. But if you do start to do that, and if you start to put energy into that, the whole world opens up. And think about this too, that there's no potential energy. There's just kinetic energy. So what that means is everything does have the potential to be great. Everything has the potential to be sucky. But if you put forth kinetic energy, one step at a time, the good will happen. And that's what we've kind of been learning on North Limestone, what we've been learning with the Kentucky for Kentucky project, some of these other businesses, is just one step at a time, keep on moving. So that's the gist. This is this Lexington rainbow. I'm going to make this the new logo of Lexington. It was an old logo that I'm bringing back. Long story. Anyway, when you speak, whoever the speaking gods are tell you to envision the people naked in the audience. So I'm doing that right now. Coleman, you've been doing Pilates, I can tell. Good for you. And I'd figured to make you guys more comfortable with me, you can also imagine me naked right now too, to ease your anxiety. But I also thought, well, maybe I could just give you guys a video of me getting naked to help speed that process, so you then have the visual imaging to connect your brain. So this is actually Stephen Fry did a documentary where he traveled across America and were interviewing different people in different states, finding out what was special about these states. So that's the background. Stephen Fry is a British comedian, pretty amazing dude. And he actually, because of this moment, Kentucky is his favorite state ever. So this is a quick 2-minute clip from Stephen Fry traveling across America. And weirdly enough, my dad's in this too, naked. I'm naked.
Journey south into the state of Kentucky, strangely appealing. Unbridled spirit is the state of Kentucky's new motto. We'll find out about the spirit later on, but unbridled? Well, this is prime horse country. The Kentucky Derby is, of course, world-renowned. Thoroughbreds are big business here, and Kentucky's top bloodstock auction house is Keeneland, where the most expensive horseflesh in the world is traded.
Morning.
I love the smell of horses. I love the smell of horses.
And according to breeder Tom Van Meter, prime stallions are not allowed so much as a sniff of a mare until their racing career is truly over.
You can touch him.
So we're talking about immensely sexually frustrated creatures. If for 3 or 4 years of their prime manhood, they're not being allowed to mate, I would have thought.
Yes, but, Stephen,
Yeah.
but
But
if they are successful racehorses, then
they really do get...
they get all they want, all they need,
Yes.
3 or
understand.
4 times a day.
But they don't know that.
Stephen,
Yeah.
if you believe in reincarnation,
You-
you would want to come back as a thoroughbred racehorse that could run, okay? Now, if you couldn't run, you know, they're going to get cut off.
Apparently, the services of the most expensive stallion can cost as much as $300,000 for one impregnation.
This is pimping on a massive scale.
That's exactly what it is.
And speaking of genetics, the eldest of Tom's 5 children, Griff Van Meter, is a Kentuckian from top to bottom.
If I say Kentucky to a foreigner, they always say Kentucky Fried Chicken and Kentucky Derby, but there's a lot more than just those. There's definitely an identity here. You get people that stay in Kentucky for life and have been here for life, and that's what I really enjoy about it, because this is where I belong. I actually have a tattoo of the state of Kentucky, kind of on my ass.
Well, this is British television, and there's nothing we like better than to look at an ass.
I would love to show you my ass.
Great. Oh, wow.
And in that,
Is that the shape of Kentucky?
that's the shape of Kentucky.
Very pleasant.
If lost, return here type situation.
So that wasn't just one drunken moment you'll regret for the rest of your life, but it was a proud statement of your Kentucky...
Exactly. It's permanent, and I'm proud every time I see it, and it's always refreshing, you know.
Refreshing bottom is a fine thing to have.
You guys didn't know that you guys were going to see my ass when you came to Pikeville. But that's where I just wanted to take you there, just to see, to see where it would get us. I'm not afraid. You shouldn't be either. And so, obviously, I love Kentucky, and a lot of other folks do too. I bled to show my love, in the words of great Kentuckians, the Everly Brothers, and then made famous by the rock group Nazareth. Love hurts. And I also like what Jesse Stewart said about this too. He said, I take with me Kentucky, embedded in my brain and heart, in my flesh and bone and blood, since I am of Kentucky and Kentucky is a part of me. So that's true. I mean, we're all in here because we love Kentucky. We would bleed for Kentucky, which gives us hope for Kentucky. And I have these 2 other great projects to show creative placemaking, but also to show how much just how crazy people are about their love for Kentucky. So this, and a lot of this stuff revolves around tattoos. I think tattoos are really important for marking. They're permanent, obviously. So when we did the Kentucky Kicks Ass thing, people were like, I'd get a Kentucky Kicks Ass tattoo, man, if you told me to. And we're like, all right, we'll pay for them. So we kind of just put that out. We're like, who all wants a Kentucky Kicks Ass tattoo? And then all of these dudes were like, and gals were like, we want one. So here's this video of just insanity. That's obviously that's both insane and awesome at the same time. But what it shows is that people are crazy about Kentucky, and they're crazy about that message, Kentucky kicks ass, which isn't necessarily our message, but a collective message of how we will differentiate ourselves and overcome, and steal that idea. I mean, put that out to people who want to get locally made tattoos. And see what happens. One, it's good for the local tattoo artists, and it's great content for your city's official webpage. It means you guys are kind of this weird, fun city. That's where people want to live. And so this other tattoo project, which is the most amazing project I've ever heard of, is two artists in Lexington, Kentucky that teach at the university, or Transylvania University, Kurt Goad and Kremena Todorova, who are community engagement social practice artists. They had a local poet named Bianca Spriggs write a love letter to the city of Lexington. And after the letter was published, then kind of put out on Facebook who wants to get parts of this tattoo, parts of this poem tattooed on their body. So they had 253 people submit to this. And it was this amazing community building project where you had all different spectrums, all social economics. You had multi-generations, rich, poor, powerful, unpowerful people participate in this collective art project that now we all have collective identity in place through. So this is just a quick case study video. Bianca's reading some of the poem. You'll see some of the tattoos, and it gives some of the stats.
It was beyond midnight when she showed up at his back door and asked him to take her on a ride through back roads out past Elkhorn Creek. It would be just like the night she wore a neon wig and her favorite leopard print heels, but lost one at the Dame, which tended to smell like a careless night out with friends. She blushed at his suggestion that instead they throw a dance party for two as bottom shelf as the cheap seats on the opening day of Keeneland. He told her that the first time seeing her under the golden ginkgo tunnel on Catalpa Street felt like finding the perfect peach in the farmer's market before brunch on a Sunday after Rocky Horror the night before at the Kentucky Theater.
So that was this amazing project. It started last year, and now with the help of the Knight Foundation, who is all about community engagement, has actually started to fund these two artists to blueprint this idea. And so now Boulder has just completed the Boulder Tattoo Project. They're working on one in Detroit right now, and then there's also there's a city just north of us that wants to have their own press release about this. They're doing one there. So it's this amazing deal, and all those little dots added up when you put the poem together, added up to this symbol, which is circle 4, and that's the That's the connector road in Lexington, New Circle Road. And it was amazing. It was amazing to be part of, and it's really changed Lexington. And this was a $10,000 project approximately to complete the project. They paid for all the tattoos. There's since been a book that the Community Development Corporation that I'll talk to helped publish. But this is putting Lexington on the map. And what's interesting is this got these two artists thinking about, well, if this was so successful in Lexington, could we write a love letter to the world? So they've just had Frank X. Walker, who's Kentucky's poet laureate, current poet laureate, write this beautiful poem that's the love letter to the world, and that this is going to be this international project, and people are already doing it. So this is part of that poem, and they're gonna announce this all at Burning Man. That's when this launches here in August. And Burning Man, I don't know if you guys know, but is actually the ultimate creative placemaking event, because 80,000 people, which is about, I think, 11 to 12 times the size of Pikeville, go out to the desert where there's no resources and create a city, a huge city, for 1 week out in the desert. And it's all about art, experience, community building. And there's a really great model in it. And also everything's free, so there's no true dollar economy, but just a shared economy that happens. So I'm actually going to go out to Pikeville to participate, or not Pikeville. I mean, we could do Burning Man Pikeville. Next year, Burning Man Pikeville is going to be off the hook. Paul Patton's going to get a tattoo. Yeah, that's right. You heard it here first on Pikeville TV. But to think that this project, this idea of tattoos and community building and shared artwork could actually have a huge effect on the togetherness of the world, on the community building in the world. So people are already getting the tattoo, parts of the tattoo translated and tattooed in whatever language that they're in. So it's a big one. So come out to Burning Man with me, and we'll go watch the tattoo project happen. So okay, now all that's going on, and so what's all this buzzle about North Limestone, where I live, where there's a whole bunch of buzzle. And here's the story. This area of town is an old industrial mixed-use area, like a lot of our cities, kind of a first-tier suburb, developed in the 1850s, 1870s, 1905, 1920s. Depression hits 1940s, more post-war development. Really interesting area of downtown Lexington, about 1 mile from city center. I live up here, a lot of density, a lot of workforce housing. And so me and some guys were just at this local coffee shop right around the corner, this thing called Minton's, eating a brunch on a bun, which really is a brunch on a bun. There's bacon, sausage, egg, cheese, this maple bacon syrup on a pretzel bun. It's addictive, like crack. And we were sitting there, and there were all these vacant shotgun houses on York Street and Eddy Street, and most of them were vacant. Some weren't vacant, some were condemned, some probably needed to be condemned, but there were a lot of them, and they were kind of uniform, and they were really interesting. And we started talking, and it's like, well, what could we do with these houses if we own these? Could we do a cool project around them? And we started talking, and it's like, well, a lot of the research we're looking at, artists and makers can really help drive the economy of a place. You know, they can help bring identity to a place. They bring creativity to a place. They bring this economy of making a product. And so that's what we said. We said, let's grab these, let's try to get these houses, let's turn them into affordable living units, live-work units for artists and makers. And then we were like, all right, that's a great idea. Now, who's going to pay for this? Because these things just, the money just doesn't magic up until we realize the money just actually magics up. So it turns out there's this great group called Art Place that has all this funny money because there has been a lot of research applied to that economy follows creative placemaking. So this group said, well, what if we get all the big family foundations together? And the way they tell the story, it was like getting the mafia together. They're like, well, if you put in some money, we'll put in some money, we'll see what happens. Let's just be experimental with this money. So it turns out there was this group that had all this money, and we're like, well, let's go ask them for some money. So we did. We asked them for $1 million, and they said that's too much money, especially for you guys who have no idea what you're doing. But here's $425,000, and we're like, all right, we'll take it. So we got that grant, and we were awarded the grant June of 2013, so one summer ago. And so since last year, a lot has happened in the neighborhood. We've bought 20 of these houses. That's kind of the existing condition of the first one we've been working on. They're about 700 square feet, 700, a little bit, some are more. Pretty shoddy, built in 1905, no framing, no nothing. You guys probably know the story. And then we started to work on them. So this is kind of what we're doing. We just launched a design competition, and we had a national design competition for ideas and programs to apply to this. And the project's going really well. We use the money. We've hired an executive director, Richard Young, who's helping us make more magic happen. We also hired a project manager to help us facilitate this project because we're a startup nonprofit. And we're also have this large development project, this $3 to $4 million development project that we are trying to manage. And we were just guys drinking coffee at the coffee shop. So we have 20 of these houses. We're renovating them right now. We hope to start to sell them over the fall and then in the spring. And then ideally, if we're able to hit our budgets, we'll just keep on churning this money. Our goal, we could easily wipe these houses down. It's not in a historic preservation district. There's no H1 overlay. But we felt it was really important to preserve them, to preserve that vernacular, and the fact that they are so close together and have such a rhythm that it actually create this very beautiful development in Lexington. And so we also used the money, we started to kind of say, well, what else can we do? How can we inspire makers and aspire economy? And so we created this event called the Night Market, and we do it on this little forgotten stretch. It's actually a hypotenuse. That actually is a Yale word, but not really. I mean, that's 5th grade geometry. And I had to look it up before I came. But there's this hypotenuse of just a cut through, and so we started doing this night market. And this was an idea we stole from New Orleans. We saw this down there. And I think that's a big part of things. Steal ideas from other cities. I mean, if it's working in another city, it could work in your city, just at the relative size, either bigger or smaller. So this has turned out to be this amazing deal. That's kind of the same deal, same picture. And this pop-up festival. It happens 3 hours per month, the first Friday of every month, and we get thousands of people out now. This year, it's looking like over a whole season of these. We generally do them from April to December is the path we're on, but we'll have thousands of people come out for each night market. We have at least 50 vendors at each night market, and we'll have a $200,000 direct spending impact per the season, and potentially even more. So it's just turned out to be this huge win, and this actually doesn't cost us that much money to put on. We put in $3,000 worth of power into the building, so we could have the string lights. We put a mural. Up, and then it's just kind of staff time and volunteer time, and we do have some amazing volunteers. So remember to tap into your volunteers. But this is this magical moment, and Richard and I were talking on the way down. We carpooled down. I don't have a car. For a lot of reasons. Richard and I were driving down, and he's like, we should get some more quantitative data, about all of this. And I'm like, yeah, there's plenty of quantitative data and qualitative data. And then I was like, but the real data is if you look around and you look at the smiles and the conversation that's happening, and if you can measure those smiles in terms of economic impact, it's true. There's so much positivity, and there's such a feeling of a new city and of new beginnings and opportunity as a result of just this, putting up some lights, bringing out some food, bringing out some music. Beer helps. Getting people together. So this is obviously part of, this is looking down York Street, and this is this ugly piece of infrastructure. It's a Kentucky American water tank that has to be there, but it's right in the middle of our development. So we're like, how do we turn this visual liability into assets? So we went out and Richard wrote another grant. We worked with the Bluegrass Community Foundation. We found a $25,000 grant from the Gimbel Foundation, and then part of our NEA Our Town grant will go to this, but we're going to create this really beautiful park there, and we can cover up all of Kentucky. And Kentucky Americans jumped on to be a tremendous partner for us. So I think that's another thing. Reach out to your utilities to see how they can partner up on existing infrastructure they have that probably can't be moved, that's needed, but is there a way to highlight that and use art to turn it into a true asset? So going from a place where there's actually a chain link fence that would be, we're on the inside of the chain link fence, so currently there's no access to that, and it's pretty barren and looks like kind of communist, 1960s Russia, which I don't want to go to. I want to go there. So, and this is the limestone face, and so we actually own this piece of property, that little lot, and we can create this pathway. And so this, I think this total is about a $50,000 project. Is that right, Richard? All in to make this happen, and then we'll also mural on the water tower. We put their logo on it to make them feel good about it, and then they're like, you can't have our logo on it. It looks ugly. So we've also done a lot of other really amazing projects without much money. So there's this really amazing one called North Limestone Music Works, which is an El Sistema-based model after-school music program, which basically takes kids starting in the second grade and gives them intensive immersion classes, orchestral classes from the time they're in second grade until the time they graduate high school. And this program will add, right now there's 25 students, and hopefully we'll add 10 to 15 students per year more if there's more funding. But it will have tremendous impact on this community because of the togetherness of this program. And then we also do little small things, like we teamed up with the local roaster to create the North Lime Pride coffee blend, which the proceeds from it we use for micro grants and the little $150 monthly grants. And that's good because people want to buy the coffee because they know it's supporting the community. We're supporting the local roaster who lives in the community. So there's this really great cycle on a very small scale, and plus, we're providing another product for people to engage with. We've been doing some large public art projects. This is part of Prohibition. This guy painting, it's, so we did that. That's on the back of the thrift store building. But we have all these large art projects happening. And this was like a $2,000 project, which I know maybe for some seems like a lot of money, but in terms of the result, a permanentized piece of art, it's not that much. And then we created, wayfinding is obviously such a big thing, and when we realized that there were all these points of vibrancy, these retail-facing businesses, public art businesses, great nonprofits, but there was no way, they weren't necessarily communicating with each other, but nobody knew where the other ones were. And so we just created a little map, and we made money off the map by selling some sponsorship to the businesses. And this has been this great little wayfinding device. Real quick, just this. This is the. I don't have a great picture of it, but back under the one-way sign is the building that we worked with the State Historic Preservation Office and Craig and Vicki Bloomberg. Vicki, I just botched that. I'm so sorry. I'll give you a poster. But we worked to get that eligible on the National Register because Lextran was going to tear it down for a pretty shoddy development. And now, because it was eligible, and then we spent the money to actually get it on the register, working with Marty. Now that's 65,000 square feet that we're actually working for an adaptive reuse project that will actually anchor the whole neighborhood. So that's kind of a lot of the stuff we've been working on in the last year. This is with our NEA Our Town grant. This is, again, ugly infrastructure, pretty visually polluting. That KU, Kentucky Utilities, owns that property, and it's not very engaging to anybody. So we're working with them to create a little public park there. And that's kind of what it seems like it takes. If you show people the pretty pictures and how they can still protect their infrastructure, but also have this big community buy-in, that you end up getting this huge, huge result out of. So that's about it. I mean, we've raised that initial $425, and then we have about a $500,000 more in terms of grants, and also in terms of a PRI line of credit that at low interest that we're actually applying to the neighborhood, and that's just from our group, not necessarily from the private sector. That's also really leading the charge in support of what we're doing. All right, that's it. That's what I got. Any questions? You guys, what do you guys want to do now?
My name is Jerry James. I'm the Donor and Community Outreach Coordinator for Nature Conservancy, and I'm also the founder of the Explore Kentucky movement. I've been trying to get to all 120 counties and kind of encourage people to showcase their communities.
Hey, I'm Coleman Larkin. I'm a sous chef and manager of Blue Raven Restaurant here in Pikeville. Also a resident artist at the Arts House, new city initiative. All-around local genius, two-time Little League All-Star.
There it is.
My name is Amelia Kirby. I'm here from Whitesburg, Kentucky, in Letcher County, just the next county over. I own and run a bar, restaurant, art venue, music spot called Summit City, and very excited to be here with y'all today.
I'm Jonathan Gay, director of the Kentucky Innovation Network office at Morehead State University, and we go out in the area and work with area entrepreneurs. I'm a native of Leslie County, and I'm also the co-chair, or the chair rather, of the SOAR Youth Engagement and Leadership Development. So we're looking for ways to promote SOAR and to ultimately use SOAR to leverage other opportunities with sort of what you're doing.
I'm Rusty Justice, and I'm a local businessman here in Pikeville. I'm here today on behalf of ECHO, which is an organization that's housed at Big Sandy Community and Technical College. I'm a board member there and a proud graduate of the Big Sandy Community and Technical College. And I have the organization is called ECHO, Embracing Cultural and Heritage Opportunities. And it's a foundational organization whose idea is to do two things: to facilitate and link all of the efforts of all you different people here in Eastern Kentucky especially, and then to weave this all together and to form a consistent and positive narrative of Eastern Kentucky.
Well, yeah, thank you guys so much for participating in this panel. And also, this is informal in so much that if you guys have questions for this group, please just raise your hand and we'll take them from the audience, and I'll read them out to the group. Are there any questions specifically, or any issues that need to be addressed in your communities that you're trying to figure out the answers to, where we do have a panel of practitioners? Well, I'll get it started. So with the Summit City Lounge in Whitesburg, you're a small business, but you're an important business. What do you think the importance of a bar is for a community? And are you more than just a bar?
Very, very important. Yeah, we are more than just a bar, but at a very fundamental essence, we are a bar, and it's the kind of the critical piece of what makes Summit City both possible, and also I think what makes it serve the function that it does. Whitesburg is a really small town. It's about 1,500 people in the coal fields here in Eastern Kentucky. Historically, the narrative of this area is there's not very much possible here. Certainly not vibrancy or things that people are really excited about, or people might travel from elsewhere to come participate in here. There's a narrative of leave if you can. Which I grew up in Wise County, Virginia, again, neighboring county just across the state line. Have lived in Whitesburg for 2,000 years.
Jesus!
Since 2000. Thank you. And the first 7 of those years Whitesburg was still a dry county. Letcher County was still a dry county. And the city of Whitesburg, we had a mayor, have a mayor who was pretty innovative and really pushed hard to get the town to go wet. And Summit City was the first bar to open. We celebrate 7 years next week, which is shocking to me, but and there was a lot of people who were really not into the idea of there being a bar in Whitesburg. And we didn't want to exclusively solely be a bar. Me and my now ex-husband were visioning what we thought this could be. We had this beautiful old historical building that we had bought to put his offices for his business in, and started peeling back the layers, and there was this gorgeous 1925 hardwood floor, tin ceiling, beautiful, beautiful space in the middle of downtown. And we're kind of like, well, we should do something with it, and started thinking about what would we want in our town. And it was all the things that we were leaving to go to Lexington or Asheville or Knoxville to go do, which was drink good drinks and drink fine beer and see live music and go to art galleries. And so we were like, let's do all those things. And we were both had full-time jobs at that point, and we're completely over optimistic about what we could pull off. But eventually kind of put all those pieces together, and after a lot of pushing and pulling and navigating, figured it out. But I think that the significance of a bar is that it is a place that people come in a cross-pollinating way that is really, really different than pretty much any other kind of space that exists, particularly in a community that hasn't had a place like that people went to congregate at church or, at the Dairy Queen, but there wasn't that space where we all want a beer and there's only one or two places to get this beer, so we're going to sit at this bar together. And in Eastern Kentucky, I don't know how much of y'all are aware of the sort of really fairly divisive narrative around coal, and that there are people, this notion of that there's a war on coal and we're all on one side or the other, which frankly is baloney and an incredibly frustrating and incredibly divisive narrative. So Summit City became a place where that kind of got undone, where it was people who were working as miners and people who were working as environmentalists were both there drinking beer and accidentally having nice conversations with each other. And so I think that the notion of a bar as a space that really does kind of undo some of the social order is really significant in placemaking.
And I think a couple of the things that I really picked up on in that description is, it is a third space. It's more than a bar. You have to find ways to get people together. And this is a thing that we see a lot across Kentucky. It's a big watershed moment, literally, when counties go from dry or moist to wet. And if you look at the recent resurgence in Danville, that tells a great story, because there's a lot of revenue that you can realize. People are going to drink, so capture the revenue.
Sunday sales. Give us Sunday sales.
Yeah, and fight for that stuff. And the cities that are making those changes are starting and kind of liberating those liquor laws are realizing that revenue. I mean, the revenue is going to go somewhere. So I think that's when you don't have alcohol. I'm a teetotaler. So, but from an economic perspective, you need that option. You need wide options because people are going to go wherever they want. But it's so that's a big part of it as a starting point from a policy level. And I think where the creative placemaking field is heading is where can policy impact it? And how can you change policy to have better outcomes and better impact? So it's a policy field. They're working on creating a research to lobby. So I think that's a big part of that story. And also, I love that term, overly optimistic. Be overly optimistic. And where their story started, they started thinking of what this space could be. And then also the story of debastardization of a space, where they removed what was put up to find what was original. And when you start to do things and you see raw material, the ideas do start to flow. So congratulations to you guys on celebrating 7 years, right? That's amazing. In a town of 150. And another thing, too, I can say, I haven't been, and that's a shame, because everybody I talk to, when they're like, oh, you need to go see Amelia, you need to go to Sea-Time, you need to go to the Summit City Lounge. Everybody I know is talking about it. It is the place. It is a destination, and they created that. So congratulations again to you. Coleman has a similar story. Coleman was living in Lexington, and he and some buddies came back here and started a restaurant.
Sure. We're about 2 months into our second year, and we're really trying to kind of replicate the success people like Amelia have had in places like Whitesburg, because we feel like Pikeville is really, really lacking that kind of Whitesburg spirit. Like you said, you live in Lexington, you've never been to Whitesburg, but you're always hearing about people telling you their citizens are ambassadors for their city and for their local businesses because they're proud of it. They identify themselves as Appalachians, whereas I don't think Pikevillians do that. Like, we seem to have tried to distance ourselves from Eastern Kentucky a little bit, and we've lost a lot of ourselves in the process, and a lot of our historical buildings and our local history. So we're just trying to bring that back, pride of place, so we can build some ambassadors for Pikeville, so you in Lexington, people will say, oh, you got to go check out this place and this spot and that spot.
The good news is people do say you got to go check out the Blue Raven.
Yeah, it's starting to catch on. We're using the internet a lot to our advantage in that regard. So it is starting to catch on. We're happy about that. But
and there was a similar story in Lexington with where I live with Al's Bar, and again it gets back to these opportunities for music and food, which are common denominators. People love music, food, they love culture. Everybody has to eat. Let people eat good food. And use that as your tipping point. And it can start slow. It can start with one space, one restaurant serving good food, but a lot comes out of it. And I know you guys who are, Rusty, you're a businessman too, you guys can maybe just chime in again on the importance of small business who have resources to help make these movements possible. It's really what you, in my mind, you kind of really need it as a major driver.
I think our approach at ECHO is we hear this, community college is a regional thing, so it hears these statements from all over, and it's a common thing. So what ECHO is really, we kind of think of it as the Christmas tree on which all the small businesses can hang their ornaments. And so it's to create that network that no matter what you're doing, you have ways to communicate one to the other. So, for example, in each of our little communities around, we have wonderful little communities all around Eastern Kentucky. And there's that core group of people that are really engaged and involved in their town, and they're doing their best. And you see some phenomenal examples of their efforts, but they struggle. And so by combining all these into a larger framework, we can gain some sort of economies of scale, so to speak, so that if a person comes to the Blue Raven, they send them on, they say, where else would you like to go? And so they can tell them about the places to eat in Whitesburg. Exactly. So through communications, interactions, we create this network and this web. And what the college has through its resources is the ability, they have a very, we have a director, and I'm actually here speaking on her behalf today. She had to be out of town, but so they're creating the website, the social media presence, and all the things that people use to communicate to facilitate the interchange of ideas. And so if you go around, for example, historical societies, there's some really good examples of preservation, historical societies all around, but they all struggle. But if you have an interest and you want to come to Eastern Kentucky, and let's say your interest is the Civil War, well then all these people could be connected through this network at ECHO and their website as to go here and see this example in Pikeville. Here's all the things that happened in Pikeville during the Civil War. These are the things that happened in Prestonsburg during the Civil War. These are the things that happened in Paintsville during the Civil War, and we can direct them across jurisdictions, so to speak. And while you're here seeing these things, stop here and eat. And so it's really an idea we borrowed from the coal industry, these economies of scale, hooking all the small mines together to make these efficiencies. And so not so much interested in what each individual is doing, just how do we interact those entities together. And that's what ECHO's mission. At the same time, to create that positive narrative, back to Coleman's point, to educate ourselves and the outside world, because we hear a lot of misinformation to educate ourselves and the outside world about the good things that are here, because there is a narrative out there that is not that way.
Yeah, and the only way to change the narrative is to actively change it and
Yes.
participate.
So it's a
in-
proactive approach.
It's proactive, and you have to be disruptive. You have to do stuff that isn't that people don't expect. You know, when we started our project, people were like, "Why would you do that on the north side of town?" And because we all agree these places are important, and you gotta show, even more than through a website and maps, which is very valid and very good work. But you really got to get people out on the streets and show them why these places are so important to us, and create opportunity for engagement at those places. That's kind of what you're looking to do, Jerry, with Explore Kentucky. Can you talk about some of your also successes and also challenges in terms of placemaking and getting that off the ground?
So basically, like my background, I graduated from Campbellsville in December 2013. Studied mass communications. I'm a photojournalist. You know, that's what I did a lot of my work in. I've had stuff in New York Times, magazines, stuff like that. And I think the camera is one of the most powerful tools known to man. I mean, especially now we have smartphones. You know, we have like big bulky DSLRs, film cameras. Nowadays, we have this simple camera. Everyone can shoot, take a photo. So we're seeing sceneries and places that we've never seen before. People can show their front door, their bathroom, their, I don't know, like places they travel. And so that's what I'm trying to get people to do is, like you guys said, showcase their community. And it's a really cool effect of we get people traveling to meet up with each other through Explore Kentucky. So I've been trying to hit all the 120 counties and try to hit really cool places, show really cool vistas. But it's not really about me. It's to get the people of the community to communicate daily what they're doing. And as of yesterday, we hit about 30,000 hashtags on Instagram. We hit about 6,300 followers on Instagram. I've really been pumping all my resources into that because I really think it's a great tool. And when I go into the towns, sometimes it's about finding a really cool place to take a picture of. Sometimes it's to meet really cool people. And I just talk to them, learn their story and stuff like that. And it's just been really great. We've had so much engagement. For example, I was telling a story about how we went to this place called the Old Cornfield in Bath County, and they went from 900 followers to 1,050 in 30 minutes of us being there, just from us putting a photo on our Instagram saying we were hanging out with them and kayaking with these guys. So it's just been beautiful. And the kind of the reason why I started doing this is because I'm from out of state. I'm a military brat. I'm in the Air Force Reserve myself. I grew up all around the world. And all I knew about Kentucky before I came was bourbon, bluegrass, and basketball. I call it the 3 Bs. Getting here for the past 4 years at college in Campbellsville, I've been involved with covering the electronic dance music scene, skateboarding, all kinds of different things. I met so many creative people. I mean, and I kind of wanted to showcase that other side of Kentucky and kind of change the stereotypes, because everyone thinks Kentucky is just, just hillbilly, people can read, barefoot, and there's some of that. But there's a lot more, and so it's been really great trip. There is like a little bit of sometimes it's been hard because some people don't understand what I'm doing. Some people were like, "Oh, you're an outsider coming in our community," So I've been trying to make sure that I've been respectful, and so.
Cool. Yeah, well, keep it up. What are some of the challenges that you've been facing?
I would say, just honestly, it's a color thing sometimes. Being a black guy in some communities, some embrace it, some don't. Also, being from out of state, some people are like, "Oh, you're not from Kentucky, so you can't do this." But the thing about it is like, as a military brat, being in the Air Force, we're taught to be stewards of wherever we go. We're taught to take care of our communities, and so something I did when I first came to Kentucky, started college, I joined the volunteer fire squad in Campbellsville. And I got really embedded into the community, helping out with that. I volunteered with downtown. I was an intern with downtown Campbellsville, interned at the radio station, the local UK extension office. I really pumped everything I could into helping the community out, and using my background with PR and social media to help our community of Campbellsville. And we created 2012. I was part of the NFL social media team in Indianapolis. I was part of a big team, and we did all the social media for the whole week for the Super Bowl. So I brought that back. And I was like, man, Kentucky needs something like that, a big push, And so I helped one summer. I helped downtown Campbellsville grow their social media, and it was just a phenomenal project. I recreated like the Beatles picture of Abbey Road. I recreated that in downtown Campbellsville, and we got like 400 likes on that photo and stuff. Nothing like you guys are doing, but very small scale in like a small community like that. So it was just great just to see help out with that. So.
Yeah, it's awesome. And one thing I really love, and I talk about a lot, it's like Kentuckians, we do self-doubt ourselves and also don't always, but outsiders call us out on our shit. Like, and also, like, you're a Kentuckian by choice, which by default makes you the strongest Kentuckian in because you could be anywhere, and you've seen different places. But it's good to listen internally, but also to listen to outsiders. And a lot of times, outsiders, people from different places, are actually going to be the most innovative at a place because they recognize what needs to be changed immediately and aren't part of the status quo.
I'll tell you one thing was kind of cool. I did like a photo project because I got accepted to study my Master of Fine Arts at Savannah College Art and Design and Texas Tech. Declined because I wanted, University of Louisville started the program, and I really want to stay here in Kentucky. So I'm going to try to work for the Conservancy and start next year. But I did a photo project about downtown Campbellsville for my portfolio, and the people were like, "Man, I've seen these buildings for several years, but the way you shot them, it kind of brought new life into it." And like, it's just people are amazed because I'm going in these towns and like getting super excited about seeing the stuff, and it's kind of providing new energy for things that they've seen for years. And so it's been just a wonderful ride, like you were saying.
Yeah, it's very valid. I mean, to be able to use art and design as communication. And to lower barriers of entry and to help people re-see things that they walk past every day. And it's so important. And social media is awesome for this because it's free and everybody can publish. And the whole Kentucky for Kentucky story is a social media story. We wouldn't have been able to do that without social media. So use those resources. And like Jerry's saying, everybody has a camera and take people. Robert.
Well, I'm very intrigued by sort of the theme that's coming up here. And it started with talking about that there's a new and different narrative emerging in Eastern Kentucky in particular. And then I'm thinking about each of you, like Coleman with the Blue Raven, with your Instagram project, and with Echo. How can we build the capacity across the region for community-based organizations and small businesses to really tell their story well? And is that a collaboration with artists and designers, or it really makes a difference how we tell the story. And now is the best time I've seen in the last 5, 6, 7 years. It's like there's suddenly an opening where people are receptive to a new story. And I just want to think about how do we build our capacity to do that really well.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Savannah, did you want to take a stab at that?
I just wanted to add to that before y'all respond to it. Amelia is involved in a project that we've been working on, a rural-urban exchange between Whitesburg and Louisville. And I know there's interest in extending the Louisville Independent Business Alliance's model and their Keep Louisville Weird campaign to East Kentucky. One of the matches, that's the vice president of that, and Louisville is interested in helping the Central Coalfields kind of do something similar. But I just wonder, if there could be some kind of campaign that, and maybe you could speak to this as a branding person, that really helps people understand the kinds of fun opportunities that are available in East Kentucky, what the nightlife is, what great restaurants there are, some kind of Keep East Kentucky Weird, small business campaign. Is there any kind of regional small business alliance like that?
And I would tag on to that. Yeah.
You guys are just a tag team.
What are the
You're like Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior.
What are the fun things? But how can we shift the perception so that people look to Eastern Kentucky as a field of possibility? That this is the time, and I think Savannah's right too.
I'd like to add on to that. Well,
Triple team. There we go.
Common thing, thing to see up here, like with Amelia. Before I started looking for the city of Pikeville, I knew about Summit City. I'd gone there and I thought that's a cool place. And then, with Coleman, coming back here and looking at what kind of roots have I already had here, being born here, that I can restore. And then once Coleman came to the very first SOAR meeting and he stepped out, and as well as Jill Valenzuela stepped out and said, we want to create art here in Pikeville. Pikeville's never been known for that. But we all eat. Everybody eats. And the common theme here is that restaurant, that, you know, that cultural thing, how can we fit into that? And like, just, I think those little trickle down from food to the art, to, you know, to the experience. And I think that really ties in so many things. It's just commonality that can build, you know, such now an opportunity.
I think, yeah, no matter what field of work you're in, I think it's just good business in the 21st century to think about these things. How do you add value to your product or service? Well, art, beauty, humor, these are the ways you add value to your product or service with your small business. You don't have to be a restaurant or a bar or an art gallery. When we go to these conferences, they always say you need to incorporate more art in your community, and the tendency is to jump and try and start an art gallery real fast or something like that. And I don't think that's, I think the best way to think of it is just replace the word art with thoughtfulness. Just be really, really considerate about what you're doing and what you're putting out there. And then if you run a hardware store, it doesn't matter. Your hardware store can be as culturally relevant to your community as an art gallery could be.
It's just, do you find that maybe a restaurant now with, you know, the small, you know, capacity of the independent, the mom and pop, can exist without thinking like that?
Well, I mean, there's so much value there's a shift across America, and we're so fortunate to be experiencing these trends where there is a shift back to place, a shift back to localism, where we have been devoid of that since really the 50s, you know, and since the automobile started to isolate all of us, and then change the economics of a place. And, you know, it's just like when you come into Pikeville, the first thing you see are very auto-centric developments. But what downtown offers us, and this movement back to downtown, is the opportunity for the pedestrian, for the interaction at a pedestrian level, at a slow pace, which is the way we were meant to move around and interact. And so I do think that's what's so nice, and that's what's so great about these local business organizations like Keep Louisville Weird, Love the Cove. We have the Local First Lexington, you know, to make people understand the importance of supporting the local business and what these businesses are, that they're more than businesses, they're the community. And art is a great driver. Like, art is amazing because you can get people to participate and build stuff together, and then have a common bond. And that's this group, this Kurt and Cremena, who do this community engagements through the arts, have really built this amazing model for it, where they interact with people, and people are making art and they don't even know it. Because a lot of times you say art, and that puts up a wall for people. People are like, oh, I'm not creative, but everybody's creative. And we all have these natural talents. And like Coleman, Coleman's actually one of the funniest writers in Kentucky. You know, and he didn't say that. He introduced himself as a sous chef, which he is. You know, but he's also a really, really funny writer. You know, so he has the ability to write and change the narrative. You know, through his own lies and slander. So empower Coleman to do it. It's funny. I mean, it's true. And you need humor, and you need to be disruptive in art and design. And that's what a lot of this field is all about, is how can you put designers and artists, because they think about the world in a different way. And we all are artists and designers. But how do we empower that creativity? And from what I understand, you empower it by lower the barrier, by saying, yeah, just go out and create something, go do something, give it a shot. In Lexington, there was a creative director who does a lot of graphic design, but he never thought of himself as an artist, so he did this show where he got people to draw on the coffee sleeves and put them up, and it kind of turned into this big moment for him because he realized he could be creative. And I think that's what it takes. And so once people are being creative and feel comfortable being creative, that's where that narrative shifts, and then you can start to highlight these stories. And that's when I do my presentation, I'm talking about other art projects that just blow my mind and have happened, and I think as a result will be catalytic and already have been, put Lexington over the tipping point, and therefore putting Kentucky as a over the tipping point too. So yes, get the artists involved early and often, empower them, give them money, make it happen.
I 100% I'm with you on that thought. And
Thank
I think
you.
that in turns out I like art. But the kind of responding a bit to Robert and Savannah, and I think one of the things that people are really seeking as a tourism experience or as a traveling experience is this notion of authenticity. And we don't exactly lack for authenticity in Eastern Kentucky. But I think we flee from it in a lot of cases. I think that our economic development leadership a lot of times is much more likely to seek out an Applebee's than a Blue Raven. And I sort of, at Summit City, we've sort of struggled with that notion that I talk about as the tyranny of lowered expectations of, you know, this community, whatever community, if it's East Kentucky, if it's Paducah, if it's wherever, you know, that they're not going to like this. This is too out there. This is too weird. This is too creative for this place. So why don't you just not put hummus on your menu because nobody's going to buy it? Well, now hummus is the best seller on our menu, you know, and it's a very tiny thing, but it's a really big thing when a community starts to re-understand itself as a place that is creative and is willing to push its own boundaries. And I think for Summit City, it's been a kind of an ongoing process of like push, pull back a little bit, assess how did that go, what was that like, can we go further, you know, so you don't want to come in and be like, you know, screw you everybody, we're doing it this way. But I think it is also really important to go outside of the boundaries of what has been comfortably done in a place.
Amelia, now you have an assignment. You have to write a story about hummus.
Coleman can write a story about hummus.
You guys can team up on this story about hummus, and I'm sure it'll be great, and I'm sure it'll get really weird where the hummus ends up. But yeah, but we like that. And hey, Robert, real quick, we haven't given Jonathan a chance to chime in, and sorry for that, Jonathan, but
No, it's okay.
you can either take Robert's question or talk about your work with youth engagement and creativity.
I'm going to answer it actually a little differently. We talk a lot about art and creativity. What I would say is we need to encourage entrepreneurship because these folks are entrepreneurs as well as artists. They have to manage a payroll. They have to manage the permit process. They have to decide when to push, when to pull back, when to assess. And so I think that's something that we have to be thinking about in terms of a community is if we don't want to go after the Applebee's, we have to encourage the Blue Ravens. We have to go out and encourage people with those skills. And so number one, we have to teach them how to be entrepreneurs. And our economic development folks do not think in those terms typically. Number two, those entrepreneurs that do exist, I think we have to encourage networks of them. Something that we're involved in, we've got a Kentucky Craft Distillers Network that we're trying to form. And we came in thinking that we were going to have to do all this programming, and so we got all these folks at the table who were wanting to launch craft distilleries. And we found that their best resource was the person sitting across the table from them, their fellow entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs who were deciding or thinking about doing this. They said, you know, oh, I've got this contact that has the right type of material to make the homebrew or whatever, and you know, oh, this person has the organic corn that you need. So I think those networks are very important. I don't think that we can count on a lot of funding for a regional body that's going to come in and organize these entrepreneurs. I just don't think the resources exist. I don't think the political will is there. So that means we got to start getting these entrepreneurs together and let them think of ways, because these folks can do it in ways that you're not going to have a super embodied organization from top down to do it. It's just not going to happen. So that's my spiel.
And I agree with that. I think you've got to be really careful about top-down organizations because top-down is afraid and they don't have the risk tolerance that entrepreneurs have or the mobility. So don't ask them to do the work for them and just kind of get them to kind of guide you a little bit, use their resources, but don't ask them to do the work necessarily. But I like what Jonathan said. He said, encourage, connect, and get these people together. And that's what this is about. And that's what an artist, entrepreneur, design, those words are interchangeable. But yeah, you have to get people together working for something. It doesn't even have to be common of we're going to do all this great stuff together. It could just be some simple thing like, hey, Coleman, do you guys have any sweet potato French fries? I need some help. And I think that's the opportunity. And because we're in a corner we're going to have to be a true commonwealth. So, I don't know. That's how I look at that. What are there? We have some more time. I'd like to hear questions from the audience, or any challenges that you guys are having that we maybe can address as a collective. Yes, ma'am.
When Whitesburg, before Whitesburg went wet, I'm sure you met some resistance on that, and that's what we're going through right now. We have a petition for a special election coming up on that issue in December. So, you know, it's very controversial. You know, we still have some of those who just, you know, are set in their ways. So, how did that proceed? How did you overcome that? You know, or was there kind of any bad feelings after it did pass from those people who resisted, and how did they kind of ease into it?
And this is in Louisa.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
you know, you're working in Louisa, which is a small county northeast of here.
Well, there was obviously certainly pushback and resistance, and I'm actually surprised that when the actual vote happened, it passed 2-1, which the community conversation did not feel like a 2-1 vote was going to happen. The community conversation felt like it's going to squeak past if it passes. So that was a learning moment for sure, that there was kind of a lot of folks out there who were not speaking up but felt pretty strongly that this was a good thing. And we had a thing that happened. I think there's two pieces. There's having good actors, right? The people who are selling alcohol are doing it responsibly and doing it well. And you can't guarantee that. We had a bar in Whitesburg that went hog wild as soon as they opened, and they were open for 3 months, and the number of arrests and insanity that happened there was significant, and it did not do us any favors.
That was the bar I owned.
I was trying to run a good place.
It was called Hog Wild.
But also there was a group right before the election, before the vote happened. There was like a march down Main Street against it, and one of the main organizers, a husband and wife main organizers of that march, a couple of years after we had been open, their son started playing in a band. He wanted to play at Summit City. He ended up playing. Their experience of who we were as a bar with their son playing there was so positive that they ended up, he's played many times, and now they take the money at the door. Like, they're part of Summit City's community now. You know, kind of, I would never have.
You evangelize them.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of that, I would just always remember that Jesus did turn water into wine.
That's a handy
So remember that.
I actually wrote an article about that in my school paper. I got in trouble.
Well, that's all right. I mean, you wrote the article. You know, who cares? At least you didn't ask first if you could write the article. You wrote the article. Good for you. No, you're not in that much trouble. That's a great question. Yes, sir.
Well, I don't know. This gets me back to the Kentucky kicks ass kind of moment. Versus all the journalism that's come out about Eastern Kentucky in the last 6 months. And then, in my view, with the current journalism, the stereotypes are actually getting worse. Yeah. That the to kind of summarize a little bit, it's kind of like, it's in the current journalism, it's gone from Kentucky sort of like barefoot and pregnant, and to Kentucky as kind of like, especially this region, as a sad sack area. And then I think it was the New York Times article that had sort of like Kentucky, help me.
I think the article was, "What's the matter with Eastern Kentucky?"
Right. Yeah. But the point I want to make is that it's kind of like I think there needs to be a way to kind of to assert as a kind of like social discourse that this kind of activism, that these kinds of initiatives are what a lot of people experience as the real Kentucky, because that's what they're doing every day. This kind of sort of everyday creativity, everyday initiative, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of like the real Kentucky that people here are seeing.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, did anybody read Silas House's response to that? You know, that this place matters? I mean, and I think you look at stats, you can make stats do anything you want. And the stats, Silas House brings up a good point. The stats are a reality. You know, there's there is a poor, this is a poor area that has social economic ills and health ills as a response to that. And where I always look at it is that that is exactly why we do need to fight, because there's so much more here than just that. And there is a group that loves this place and cares about it at a fanatic level and wants to do well. And we can't, and you know, the only thing wrong with this guy, Bill Strickland, who runs the Manchester Bidwell Project in Pittsburgh, has this great line. He says, the only thing wrong with poor people is they're poor. And that's a fixable condition. And I think we all know that. And that's why we have to put pressure on politicians to change their ways. I mean, we've been like this for a long time, and we have to change that narrative. And that's what everybody's saying is we're going to change the narrative. And if we don't, you know, people vote with their feet. They're going to move away. But we don't want people to move away. So you gotta change it, and you got to fight. So I don't know. I mean, at the same time, there's negative publicity, but then there's tons of positive publicity, like you know, is it Vico or Vico? How do you say that? Vico. So Johnny Cummings, no, he is a media darling, and you know what he did? He said, "All right, we're going to have equal opportunity rights in this small little town." He was the third Kentucky town that did it, and that is an inspirational story that had New York Times coverage. And I think more people are interested in that story at the end of the day than a sensationalized story. I mean, those stats are those stats, and those stats have to change, first and foremost. And the only way we're going to get them to change is improving education and healthcare. And so think about that when you're voting. I mean, that's our power. Tell your story, tell these stories, but vote the right people in.
And you also have these ridiculous TV shows that don't help anything at all.
The reality shows.
Yeah, and that's sensationalized media, but for all of that stuff, there's so much positivity with all of this artwork. I mean, with the Wendell-Berrys of the world that are fighting this good fight, that are being prophets and models for us all to attach to. Yeah, you can get sensationalized media about any state. And then you can find out what's great about every state. And every state has liabilities and every state has assets. And to change the story, you have to concentrate on the assets. Keep on plugging away at the assets and eliminate the liabilities as a result of the strength of the assets. I don't know, that's my response. Yes, sir.
I want to make a point. One thing, don't get too hung up on your liabilities. You know, the Hatfield-McCoy feud, I'm sure 20 years ago would have been controversial in Pike County, but now you've made a virtue out of a vice. You know, one other gentleman that I know is Charles Schaus, who's a movie maker, aspiring filmmaker in Breathitt County, who did a documentary on Bad Tom Smith. Had Tom Wopat come in and narrate it. Now he's trying to use that documentary to bootstrap into a film. So don't be afraid of your heritage where it may be not necessarily so savory at all times.
Yeah, embrace the bad. I mean, that's what Kentucky for Kentucky has done. We embrace the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then we kind of have fun with it.
Justified.
Yeah, Justified. I'm pro-Justified. I love the show.
I'd like to add something on the Justified. Sandy Kirk from the Promise Zone, you guys, and I had an opportunity to read our grant that we, you know, the original proposal, and in there's a paragraph that said there are certain similarities with Justified, and it allowed the people who were reading that grant to automatically go and try to zero in and picture the community, and that was one of those places where it was a huge positive because there were fans and followings and Justified and other things like Kentucky Bitters and all these other things. I mean, it actually creates a sense of something that we have that can relate and be of benefit to us. You know, there's moments when you want to like cringe because you happen to know the person that they're talking to, but still, it's you know, it's not all bad.
Yeah, and the only problem with Justified is that it's not filmed in Kentucky. I mean, that's a $50 million a year opportunity, which gets back to infrastructure. So do we have the infrastructure for film and media? And obviously we don't. So we're losing those dollars. And why are we losing those dollars? Because we don't have the policy in place to support it, to support those industries.
Segue into that, something that I've been involved with.
Like you're going to ride a Segway?
I wish. That was
Segway tours.
Well, have y'all heard of the movie Burning Kentucky at all? Bethany Anderson, she kind of sent me a message one day, and she said, hey, I like your pictures, and want you to be involved at location scouting. It's going to be like an Appalachian Romeo and Juliet story. and she's trying to really kickstart the film industry here, and they bring equipment, Hollywood-style movie equipment here. And so it was great. I've gotten to go out and shoot some photos of her, bring her to Louisville and location scout for abandoned houses, take her out in Marion County and stuff like that. So you guys should really plug into that movie and try to get involved with that, because they're shooting, I think, about $400,000 budget, and they're going to try to tour it around at different film festivals. So look into that.
Yeah, and she specifically wanted to shoot a movie about Kentucky, in Kentucky, using Kentuckians, and with that extensive direction and intent of making a Kentucky movie.
Yeah.
We're kind of nearing the end. If there's any burning Kentucky questions in terms of the larger sense, not the movie, I don't know anything about it. Speak now or forever hold your peace. And if you don't say anything, we just assume everything is fixed. And this has been an awesome conference.
Everybody gets a poster, right?
Everybody gets a poster, sure. Any burning desires? Any last things? Well, hey, thank you guys so much. You did great. And let me turn that over to you. Is there anything you guys left out that you don't want to say, that you want to leave the people with?
I would just say this: we have the SOAR initiative. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to plug into it. Don't be afraid to plug into it if you don't always get your voices heard the first time, because we're still learning as we go. Keep on trying and make sure you make your voices heard and plug into that.
And I would say that one thing that's unique about Eastern Kentucky and small town that you probably don't have experience is we don't have these abandoned enclaves like the North Lyme area where young entrepreneurs can kind of be free to do their own thing. We don't have that opportunity here, really. We're always going to need somebody's permission. We're always going to need somebody to tap us on the shoulder and say, it's okay, you can do this, do that. So take advantage of us. And also, if you're working on your own, start thinking of these problems, these branding and communication problems, the same as you would a plumbing or electrical problem. You got to call a pro. You got to call somebody like Bullhorn or Griffin. When you're doing a project like the Riverfield Arena, like that needs to be on your agenda first and foremost. That needs to be part of the plan, because in Pikeville, I can't speak about Whitesburg or any other place, we miss a lot of opportunities, and things that sound good on paper don't really stick, and we miss the spirit of it, and people don't, like you're talking about a narrative, the narrative gets lost or muddied in the process because people aren't involved from the beginning, and it's not something that they can be friends with. It's not livable. They can't live with it. Like the Riverfield Arena, that doesn't sound appealing. It doesn't even sound appealing. So I think it's a missed opportunity to get the community involved, pay homage to a local musician or something in the naming of it. I mean, those things are important.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's never too late, and always find the opportunity. And I just walked around downtown right before I came in here, and there are vacant storefronts, and find the owners. Not that you need permission, but find the owners. Do a pop-up shop. That's been a big event in Covington's done a lot of that. Detroit's done a lot of that. Pittsburgh's done a lot of that. Temporary retail, temporary moments where it's low risk, low expense, just to get people out. I mean, that's the night market. Put up a little burn barrel and start a fire, and then you're camping out, having a little fire party. People will come out for that. They're like, hey, did you go to the fire party? And we're like, yeah, we went to the fire party. It was weird. And then next thing you know, somebody's going to be having beer at the fire party. And it's like, oh, we're out doing the fire party. And then the next thing you know, you're like on the cover of the New York Times, like, hey, dude, the fire party. It's like Burning Man. It started 40 people in San Francisco. Now it's 80,000 people in the weird desert. I don't know. Yeah, that's, again, Burning Man. All right, that's all I got. I think that's great. Thank you guys so much for participating.